Hi everyone, Simon Jacobson, another episode of Meaningful Live. Trust issues. What's blocking your bonds? This program is dedicated by Yvonne Arazo in memory of Umberto Arazo. In our emotional relationships, there's a word called bonding, to bond with someone. What exactly is bonding? And how is it different than just the word love? It's a critical difference. When you bond with someone, it's called a commitment. It's not just a connection, it's not just an attraction, a crush. It's an actual commitment. Think of it in terms of a foundation, which is actually the word used by the mystics, the Kabbalists, when they describe the concept of bonding. The Hebrew word is yesod. Yesod means a foundation. What is the foundation of a building? We don't really see it. Unless during construction you can see it beneath the ground. It's not very elegant. It doesn't look attractive. It's usually just concrete. Looks like a concrete box with some pipes that come out of it. But that becomes the foundation of the entire building. And though we don't see it, without it the entire building wouldn't stand. So we live on the top floors, the first floor, the second floor, the third floor, but we don't often think about the foundation beneath it all. What makes a foundation is that it's unwavering, that it's unconditional, that it is solid and firm and we can rely on it. When you say the word love, how many people have we met that fall madly in love with each other, can't live without each other, and 2-3 years later, they're in divorce court in one of the ugliest battles you'll ever see. So what happened with the love? Even if you were to suggest it was real love, but it clearly was not sustainable. So there are a lot of words that are thrown out there, and I want to talk about bonding, how important that is, especially in the context of trust. Because trust can only be built on consistency. If someone tells you they love you, or they tell you, trust me, that's the good one, trust me. Or they do something that is trying to gain your confidence. So if you're an intelligent person, you don't fall for it once, not even talking about if someone is a con artist. You want to test the waters. It's called due diligence. You want to see, does it last? You want to see it on different circumstances, under different conditions. Will they remain committed to me even when things are not that easy? That's where trust comes into play. I've always loved the line where they say trust is not built on perfection, it's built on accountability. Perfection is a fantasy. Nobody's perfect. Someone will say, I'll only trust you if you're perfect, if you never make a mistake. That's not what you're looking for. What you're looking for is accountability. I care about you. So even if I make a mistake, I will be accountable. I won't cover it up. I won't lie about it. Like they say, the silence is worse than the crime. I won't do that. I will be accountable and will try to make amends. In other words, a transparency. It all comes down to that consistency. So let's talk about that. What about consistency without love? Well, here's the story. One of the things that are very fascinating to really understand human nature, you just have to look at children. Children tell us everything we need to know. Because children are the purest form of who we are. It's the best version of ourselves. In technology, they say a smartphone, 10.0 is better than 9.0. 9.0 is better than 8.0, whatever the numbers are. But when it comes to human beings, I would say 1.0 is better than 2.0, better than 3.0. You look at a child, especially a newborn child, it's like the freshly fallen snow before human beings have trampled on it. You want to see a person at their best, at their most perfect? That's a newborn child. They haven't yet developed into an adult. They haven't yet actualized their potential, but it's still the purest form. Whether it's physical, biological, look at how a child breathes. You see the heaving chest up and down. They're using 100% of their lungs. As adults, we use 80%, 70%, whatever the number is, because the toxins have started to enter. The same thing with our arteries and our other systems. They're clear. by a young healthy child. So the same thing psychologically. One of the things you see with children is the need for consistency. When children their lives are disrupted, even for important reasons, people move, and children at a young age have to leave the country in which they lived or the city in which they lived, moving to another place, have to make new friends, new schools, a new bed to sleep in. These things are disruptive and they affect the child. Now, of course, you can buffer it and you can do many things to compensate. It's not like you can't move. But the more children are so-called unsettled in their lives, it affects their level of confidence. For children, things need to be extremely consistent. The truth is for adults too, but adults can have more resilience and can, in some way, perhaps adapt. But children, if they don't know what bed they're sleeping in the next night, it's very disturbing to them. Now, one-time thing, okay, there's a sleepover, but if it's consistent, they come home at night from school, and they don't know if their parents are going to be home, or they don't know if their father's going to be in a good mood, or the mother will be in a good mood or a bad mood. These things are tremendously disruptive forces that undermine the confidence of a child, because a child needs the yesod, the foundation that we're talking about. That's what trust is built upon. That is what confidence is built upon, consistency. So love without consistency, yes, has some merit, but it's lacking the most important ingredient of all. So when we talk about bonding, you'll find that many people can love, but they don't know how to commit. They'll talk about commitment problems, commitment issues, as they put it. What's really going on is the lack of ability, maybe the confidence to commit something. You always want to have a back door out. And that's usually because you don't feel secure. You want to always be safe. Now, I understand you can make a logical case. It's always important to have an exit clause and so on and so forth. We understand that. But the fact that a person is not ready to go in all the way, there are reasons for that, because you don't want to be vulnerable, you don't want to be hurt. Now, keep in mind, connection and attachment is so critical to the human being. We've talked about this many times. Today they have the name for it, attachment disorder, or connection disorders. So what is attachment? Attachment is the fact that each of us spends 9 months in our mother's womb, completely, consistently reliable, that you'll be getting the food you need, the drinks you need, the oxygen you need, everything you need will be provided for you without any effort of your own. This is implanted and embedded in the very psyche and subconscious of the child for 9 months. When a child is born and the umbilical cord is cut, the child expects the same. And I say expects, I don't mean it in a conscious way. It's just part of, just like a flower expects to be watered. And when it's not, one time is one thing, but consistently it's being deprived of its most important nutrients and nourishment and nurturing, it will begin to wither. It'll begin to try to figure out ways to find that love, find that connection and attachment. That connection and attachment is not just love, it's love with tremendous, absolute commitment. And that's why it's so critical in life, because it defines us living in a world, whether you call it a hostile world, a selfish world, regardless of what you name it, it's a world that's not safe. Safety and security is critical. So when you look around the world at people you can't rely on, and there are many people out there who are predators, users, abusers of all sorts. And even with someone who's not criminal, the fact is people's self-interest is number one. And that self-interest will often impede or impinge upon our needs. So without that type of foundational connection, what you're lacking is the ability to really trust. So if you ask yourself, who do you truly trust in your life? Who do you trust? There's someone you absolutely trust, that you can speak to with them just as you speak with yourself, without any defenses, without fear of being criticized or judged, and so on. Stigmatized. Not such a simple answer, not a simple question. Can you even trust yourself? Do you trust yourself? All that goes into the bonding aspect of life. And it's something that is truly lacking today. We say there's a crisis in the area of relationships, a crisis in intimacy, a crisis in bonding. Intimacy which is a powerful, powerful word, is very much all about trust. You're vulnerable with someone, you're intimate with them, but if it doesn't have that ability of absolute trust, it's not just about the moment, the pleasure of the moment, but something you know you can rely on. What you're having is an experience, a taste of something, but it doesn't have the foundational consistency that perpetuates and is sustainable. So that's why we do have trust issues. There's no question about that. With all our technologies and all our advancements, now the trust is eroded in many people's lives, and it begins young, from young age. If you couldn't trust your parents, who are you going to trust? If a young child cannot trust his father or mother, who are you going to trust? Some stranger? So we go about our way, and what do? Like everyone, we compensate. We build defense mechanisms, sophisticated armor, all types of ways to protect ourselves. Yes, at times also it includes trusting to some extent, even masquerading like we trust. How many people masquerade, and when push comes to shove and they're really threatened, you suddenly realize they're not there for you, or you're not there for them. So this is all the negative news. But remember, awareness of a problem is half the cure. So the awareness is important to know where you stand. And so what does it take to really begin to trust again? I find it interesting that the US currency, of all words that are etched on our pennies and our nickels and our dimes and our quarters and our dollar bills and all our currency, in God we trust. We trust. That word, which essentially implies that we don't trust anyone else except God. Of all places, where is that engraved? On our money. Is money something you can trust? Money comes and goes. Money is used all the time to buy people, to sell people. And I don't mean that necessarily in the context of slavery, but I mean to say it wields power. And yet, on that very money, the symbol of materialism, that personifies selfishness, the words trust, but in God we trust. It's similar to what the Founding Fathers, when they wrote into the Declaration of Independence, all men are created equal. All people are created equal. Created. And by virtue of that, are endowed by the Creator with inalienable rights. Inalienable. Which means rights that cannot be taken away from anyone, because they weren't given to you by anyone. So it's a clear recognition that there are some things that are inherent within us that nobody can tamper with. I always found it ironic when they call securities, financial securities. Remember the prudential rock, all indicating and trying to instill in us that marketing angle. You could trust us. But money is the last thing you can trust because, as I said, it's as temporary as anything. Yes, while you have it, it has some power. So the truth is, the only thing you can really trust are things that are eternal. Now, whether you want to use the word creator or God or other words like that, that's up to you. That's semantics from my point of view. But bottom line is we all need to have something that is inalienable, something that is unwavering, something that is absolutely solid. So ask yourself another question, just as I asked before. Whom do you trust? Do you trust yourself? What is eternal in your life? What value would you call as an eternal value? When I say eternal, it means unchangeable, under all circumstances, in extreme cold, in extreme heat, in extreme slow, extreme fast. I'm using scientific environments, but the same thing as psychological ones. Under all circumstances, this value you will forever hold on to. Many people do not have an answer to that question because they weren't compelled to ask it. It's critical to have that because when you talk about a world that's ever-changing, a temporal world, a world that is impermanent, and you don't have anything permanent to hold on to. So while things are going well, think of it like a calm sea, great. You don't notice. But as soon as the storm strikes, then you'll see which ship has a strong foundation, which tree has roots that make sure that are firmly holding it and grounding it. You only see that when there's a challenge. when something is a resistance, when there's something that is a setback. So we don't have to wait for those moments. This is about building within ourselves that capacity. As I said, first thing is awareness. You're aware that you did not get it as a child or not get it adequately. There was abandonment issues, absenteeism, unreliability. You began to develop what some people call independence because you have no one to rely on, so you rely on yourself. But keep in mind, what happens is what has been eroded is the real trust, and you need to have something to trust. You need to have someone to trust. So it's a step-by-step process for all of us. But it begins by recognizing the lack and then recognizing what can I find in my life? What value do I absolutely believe in? How many people will say, the people I love, my children, my spouse, my friends, certain moral, ethical values, all good, list them and see indeed, are these things that you are absolute in your life? And if you have that, that's a good beginning. That's how you build your foundation. If you don't, it's time to start thinking about it. But to bring it back to the level of relationships, you can't just begin from scratch again. You're looking for that. You're searching for that. You're searching for someone in your life that you can share with. Not just you enjoy each other, not just you're physically or sexually or other ways attracted to each other, not just that there is some common denominator, but there are things that you both eternally share. And a vision of life, of a future, what mark you want to make in this world. That's where the bonding comes into play. So when we have issues, trust issues, that's what we need to look at. And you begin step by step, divide and conquer. It's impossible to just go from a state of complete distrust to a state of total trust. That's sometimes what we do. The tendency is we go to extremes. And then we begin to overtrust. We trust someone, we create the fantasy, and then we are often disappointed. So it has to be done in a step-by-step, a more mature fashion on discovering these type of things and discovering what's blocking the things that don't allow you. Remember, there are blocks. The blocks can include fear, they can include past hurt, abuse, pains, suffering, traumas that have affected us. Many people are afraid of real closeness because they were hurt by someone that was close to them. This is very common. Where, and then every time someone gets close to you, that triggers a previous trauma, a previous painful experience. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's not. Most times it's not. It's learning to recognize these triggers, learning to recognize these points, and understanding them in context. That these are not meant to be just, okay, stay away. It's meant to be, these are areas where your bonding and your trust and your foundations were compromised. And you need to rebuild that. And you rebuild it again step by step. Doesn't have to begin with a total commitment. Find someone you can talk to, someone that you can trust, that will not betray your confidence, and test them. When I say test, not over test, because that's often what we do, but test them to see. Does your confidence, does your trust in them continue? Do you feel does it continue to resonate? Now, it's not always easy to find, but keep in mind, don't become delusional. Don't just find someone and say, I think, okay, here's a panacea to all my issues. It is a step-by-step paced process. But it's important to start engaging in it. Because the faster you start, the faster you will grow. And it's vital in our lives. It's vital. So often when we look around today in the world, you're not going to find anyone advertising, sustainable, eternal, foundational elements. Yes, they use lines like that. Copywriters use them all the time, especially selling things that actually have no such real value. But they're trying to convince you this has eternal value. Eternal values don't come from a sale. They don't come from a product. They're not a commodity. They're internal forces, things like your soul, your truth, God, higher values, love. They're always sublime. They're not subject to the sensory stimulation, and they are exactly that, foundational elements in your life. Time to begin to build them. Or if you have them, to reinforce them, because it's something we need constantly in this stormy world in which we live, with its disruptions and its unpredictability and uncertainty, especially in these times. That's when you need certain factors, certain forces in your life that keep you anchored, keep you grounded, while you're also growing and moving and navigating. So, my friends, that is the thought for this week about bonding, about looking at what's blocking us, trying to remove those blocks and impediments, and really embracing our lives for this great potential. You'll see every bird, before it begins to fly, it needs a nest. It needs to be protected. It's nurtured. And then comes the day it's ready to fly. A bird without a nest in its earlier years is not going to have the confidence to fly. So to spread your wings is very beautiful, but it comes because there's behind the scenes, in the back end, so to speak, there are forces that are creating the confidence for you to spread your wings. May you and I and all of us spread our wings to the fullest. This has been Simon Jacobson. MeaningfulLife.com is our website. If you've enjoyed and found this meaningful, please share with others. Subscribe to our offering. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. And of course, always want to hear your thoughts, your comments, your feedback. Because the fact is you are indispensable. And we are committed to helping appreciate that and helping us all appreciate each other in that context. An indispensable musical note in a cosmic composition. And an honor to be with you, an honor to share some words. Thank you so much, and everyone be well.